All right, I will say good morning, everyone. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves. Yoel Sara Kelman for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this month in honor of the birth of their daughter, Oriya Tahel, and in the hope that all of the couples davening for children will have their tefilos answered b'karov. To thank Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this month in honor of their grandchildren, Adin, Tzvi, and Naftali, Moshe, and Shirley Elbaum and family for dedicating the Shiurim and Drushos this month, the commemoration of the yahrzeit of Gerald Elbaum, Yaakov Kopel, Ben R Avraham Menachem. We open on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah, and the family a nechama. And I will say also a mazel tov to the Kovacs Mishpacha on the occasion of the bas mitzvah of their daughter. Baruch Hashem today, mazel tov, mazel tov. And I will say with that, let us begin. So the beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Chaf Aleph. We are picking up Emir Hashem on Chaf Amud Beis. We left off yesterday with... No, I'm sorry. I'm so used to always being behind. Hey, Baruch Hashem. We actually left off on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph yesterday. This is great. It's great to actually be on schedule. Baruch Hashem. So we left off on 21a. We left off actually Kol HaLayla. Kol HaLayla. So 2, 4, 5 lines down from the top. Kol HaLayla, kasher l'ktsiras ha'omer. The entire night is kasher for ktsiras ha'omer. So remember again, you have to cut down the omer on the night of the second day of Pesach, what in Eretz Yisrael is the first day of Chol HaMoed. So the entire night is kasher for the cutting down of the Karban HaOmer. Damar Mar, Katsira Usefira Balayla V'Haba'a Bayom. Because again we said, Katsira, the cutting down of the Omer, Sfira, the counting of the Omer is done by night. V'Hava, the bringing of the Karban Omer ultimately is done by day. Now it's interesting, because if you notice, up until this point in time, whenever the Gemara wanted to prove something, it brought a series of psukim. This is not a series of psukim. Here the Gemara is just making a statement. Rashi points out over here that ultimately the limud is in Meseches Menachos. But the Gemara chooses not to go through the whole limud over here. Good. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ul hektar chalav veivarim, burning of the additional sacrificial fats or leftover sacrificial fats and limbs can be done at night, the entire night. Kol halayla, d'chsiv, kol halayla ad haboker, as the pasuk says, the entire night until the morning. Zeh haklal. This is the rule, says the Mishnah. Davar shemitzvah savayam kasher kol hayom. So remember again, the Mishnah said, this is the rule. Anything that is kasher the entire day can be done the entire day. So it says the Gemara, Zeh klal la'asuyei mai. So we know that whenever the Mishnah says Zeh klal, this is the rule, it's coming to include something additional that was not stated in the Mishnah. So what is the Mishnah coming to include? This is fascinating. The Gemara says, La'asuyei sidur bazichin v'siluk bazichin. They both say it is coming to include. Now, the bazichin literally means the spoons of frankincense. Remember again, in the Beis Hamikdash was a shulchan. On the shulchan you had lechem aponim, showbread, right? 12 loaves. In addition to that, you had bazichin, spoons of frankincense. Every Shabbos, the old loaves were taken off and the new loaves were put on. The old loaves were given to the mishmar, to the Kohanic shift, who had finished their shift and were now outgoing, and the new loaves were kept ultimately on the shulchan itself. So listen to this. So the Gemara says, what does it mean when it says the entire day is kosher? It's coming to include the changeover of the lechem hapanim and the spoons of frankincense, Rabbi Yossi. And in accordance to the position of Rabbi Yossi, Desanya, listen to this. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Silekes hayeshon shachris, v'sidars hachadosh arvis, ein bekach klum. So Rabbi Yossi was like this. Rabbi Yossi says, if you took off the old loaves, quote unquote old loaves. When I say old, remember again, one of the nisim, one of the miracles in the Beis Hamikdash is that the lechem hapanim, the showbread, remained fresh. So when we say old, we mean the bread that was put on the shulchan last week. If you took off the quote-unquote old loaves in the morning, right, together with the spoons of frankincense, and didn't place the new loaves and new spoons on the shulchan until late afternoon, it doesn't really mean Arvis, that's because Arvis usually means nighttime. You can't wait till nighttime. You have to still do it during the day, but you wait until later in the day. Ein bekach klum. That it's okay. Rabbi Yossi says it's all right. Omani makayim lifnei Hashem tamid. What about the pasuk that says that the lechem hapanim has to be on the shulchan tamid? What does one do with that? What does one do with that? Shelo shulchan below lechem. That comes to teach me that you can never have you can never go overnight without lechem being on the shulchan. So we'll say Rabbi Yossi's shita, interestingly enough, is even if there's a lapse, even if there's a time during the day when there's no lechem on the shulchan, that's okay, as long as we don't go overnight without lechem on the shulchan. So therefore the Gemara suggests that when the Mishnah says kol hayom kasher, the entire day is kasher, is coming to include this position of Rabbi Yossi, namely that halacha lamaisa, you have the entire day to go ahead and put the new lechem on the shulchan. Now, Rabosai, the Rabbanon argue on that. If you look at Rashi says with Rabbi Yossi, Darum Mesechas Menachos, Afilu Silek Esayishon Shachris, the Siddur Sachadasha Arvis, Avzu Haisa Tamid, Umau Tamid, Shelo Yolon Shulchan Below Lechem, Aval Rabbanon, Tafcho Shel Zeh, Misader B'tzad Tafcho Shel Misaleg. So we'll say, interestingly enough, the Rabbanon disagree. And the Rabbanon say, actually, the procedure for the Lechem Apanim is that as soon as they took off the old loaves, they immediately replaced it with the new loaves. According to the Rabbanon, so we'll say, really what it comes down to is it's a machlokes on how to darshan the pasuk, Lifnei Hashem Tamid. The Rabbanon understand that quite literally, there must always be lechem on the shulchan. And therefore, the moment you remove the old loaves on Shabbos morning, you replace the new loaves right there. You have the new loaves standing right there, ready to go into the shulchan. Rabbi Yossi says, no, Lifnei Hashem Tamid means you can't leave the shulchan bare overnight. But if there's a couple of hours, you take off the old loaves in the morning and don't put the new loaves back up until the evening, that's okay. Beautiful. So let's go back there. Assuming the Mishnah said, any mitzvah which can be done at night, or which is done at night, you have the entire night to fulfill the mitzvah. La'asuye mai. What does this come to include? This is incredible. La'asuye achilas psachim. It comes to include the eating of Karban Pesach. Udilo ki Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And not in accordance, right, with the position of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. What does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah say? Disanya va'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh. The Torah says you shall eat the meat of the Karban Pesach on this night. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Ne'emar kan b'layla hazeh. The ne'emar lahalon va'avarti be'eretz Yitzrayim b'layla hazeh. The pasuk says by Karban Pesach, you will eat the meat that night. And by Makas Bachoros, it says, I will pass through Egypt on that night. When did Makas Bachoros occur? When? Chatzos, midnight. Ma lahalan Chatzos. Just like Makas Bachoros is Chatzos, Af kan Chatzos. So this is a machlokes by Karban Pesach. So the Rabbanon say, Karban Pesach could only be consumed up until Chatzos. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, you have the entire night. The Gemara suggests that when the Mishnah says anything that's kosher at night, you could do the entire night, is coming to include the position of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, namely that you could eat Karban Pesach the entire night. Now, what's interesting about this is, it sounds like the Gemara over here is paskening like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that you're allowed to eat Karban Pesach the entire night. Take a quick look at Tosas. Tosas says, La'asuye achilas psachim udlo Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So the Gemara says, Mikol Makom, Nira, Dahalacha, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Ultimately again, I'm sorry, I mixed up the Shitas. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is the one who holds that halacha lamaisa, you can only go ahead and eat Karban Pesach until Chatzos. Right? The Mishnah is saying that when the Mishnah, sorry, one more time. The Mishnah says, any mitzvah that you could do at night is kosher the entire night. So the Gemara says, what is that coming to include? The Gemara suggests it's coming to include consumption of Karban Pesach. And the Gemara is saying that our Mishnah is teaching us that you can eat Karban Pesach the entire night. To which the Gemara says, which is interesting because that is not in conformance with the position of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, when can you eat Karban Pesach until? Chatzos. Where does he get that from? Gezerah Shavav Laila, from Karban Pesach to Makas Bachoros. Just like Makas Bachoros occurred at Chatzos, Karban Pesach can only be eaten until Chatzos. Now, both say. So what's interesting is, according to our Gemara seems to side with the Rabbanon and not with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, which would allow you to eat Karban Pesach the entire night. To which Tosfos says, just understand that's not the halacha l'maisa. Tosfos says, Mikomakum nira the halacha ki Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Ikastama ba'arvei psachim diktani kavasi disnan hapesach achar chatzos betame se'adayim v'chei mishnah be'ezu mekomon ustama b'sol parakam and the brachas gabe maisu bana Moshe be'gamliel be'beis hamishta amr lehem skip down a little bit. Rabbi says, so again umoki look Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah amr chatzos v'im kain. So therefore Tosfos just says, please understand, as much as the Gemara here seems to conclude that the halacha is like the Rabbanon and not like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, i.e., that you could eat Karban Pesach the entire night, that is not the halacha. The halacha we paskin is Karban Pesach can only be consumed until Chatzos. Why is this important for us? Well, it's important for us because we're going to have a Beis HaMikdash and Yahrzeit Hashem b'shatol Netzachas by this Pesach, and therefore we have to know you could only eat Karban Pesach until Chatzos. But if Chas V'Sholom we don't have a Beis HaMikdash by this Pesach, there's another important ramification. V'im kein tzarich lemaher le'echol matzah b'leilei psachim kodem Chatzos. So Tosfos says this is why we have to make sure to finish up the afikomen. Va'afilu matzah shel afikomen sharichiyov matzah bezman hazeh doraisa. They both say this has important ramifications for us even in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, because matzah, especially, right? Matzah is doraisa, and matzah is connected to Karban Pesach, and just like Karban Pesach must be consumed by Chatzos, so too one must finish their last matzah consumption, i.e. afikomen, by Chatzos. And Abba said we know that is halacha l'maisa. However, Tosfos does say, Ava b'halal sha'achar afikomen ein lahachmir kolkach sharmid rabbananu. So Abba said this is actually quite interesting. But Tosfos says by halal, you don't have to be so machmir to finish it by Chatzos because that's only the rabbanan. Abba say, but what you do see something very interesting from Tosfos is, it does appear that according to Tosfos, ideally, you would finish Hallel before Chatzos as well. Very fascinating. Again, many argue on this, Tosfos. Not about Matzah, but about Hallel. But for us, Halacha L'maisa, we do paskin like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, even though the Gemara here doesn't make it sound that way. We do paskin like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Karban Pesach must be finished by Chatzos. Matzah must be finished by Chatzos as well. The rest of the Seder could go on until you desire. Good. So we'll say, Hadron Allah, Hakar L'Mafreya, Mazel Tov. New parak. Hakar Yisam Megillah Omid V'Yoshev. A person could read the Megillah, if a person read the Megillah standing up or sitting down, that's okay. Halacha L'maisa can read the Megillah in whatever position you want. Not whatever position, but L'maisa sitting up, standing down, both fine. So the Gemara says, Kara echad karu shnayim yatsu. Listen to this. Whether one person read the Megillah or two people read the Megillah, halacha l'maisa, they could both be, it could be yahrzeit. So in other words, Megillah could be read even by two people simultaneously. We'll see the novelty in that. So the Gemara says, Makom shenagu levarich yivarich. If you live in a place where the minhag is to make a bracha on the Megillah, we'll discuss which bracha that is, you make a bracha. Shelo levarich, lo yivarich. And if you live in a place where the minhag is not to make a bracha, you don't make a bracha. So now the Gemara launches into other halachas. B'sheni v'chamishi b'Shabbos b'mincha koren shlosha. Mondays, Thursdays, Shabbos mincha, you read 3 aliyos. You read 3 aliyos. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says b'sheni v'chamishi b'Shabbos b'mincha. Ezra Tikein. They both say this was a takana of Ezra. Shikorin b'sheni ubechamishi b'abakan perik meruba. So both say, so this was a takana of Ezra, that Klal Yisrael should never go more than 3 days without going ahead and having a communal Torah reading. So Mondays, Thursdays, Shabbos mincha. Ein pochasin mahen. You can't read less than 3 aliyos. Ve'imo sifan alein. No hosafas. We'll say, by the way, that no hosafa rule is just like a din in sakanas nefashos, right? Can you imagine the guy by trying to make a hosafa on Monday or Thursday? Done. It's bad enough if somebody has a baby, right? And they have to sing Mazel Tov begrudgingly, right? Begrudgingly we sing Mazel Tov. Right? So we'll say, so no hosafas. Ve'ein maftirin b'navi. And ultimately, no haftorah. No haftorah. Now this is quite fascinating. Now, by the way, in all seriousness, why are there no hosafos on Mondays and Thursdays? Look at Rashi. Because they'll say people have to go to work. They'll say this, again, I think we would all agree that the way we daven during the week is not the optimal way to daven. I think we all agree with that, right? But lamaisa, people have to go to work. This is not a new dynamic. I just want to point out, this is already Chazal are saying this. The way we structure davening during the week is not an ideal structuring. But bezeas apecha tocha lechem, that's the klala of Adam Arishon, the sweat of your brow, you will eat your bread. You do what you gotta do. So we daven, we get in, we get out, we do what we have to do, but it moves at a, what's the word? Expeditious pace, right? It moves at an expeditious pace. And again, I just want to point out, sometimes we think that we're going against the will of Chazal. Just so you understand, Chazal understood this, and Chazal structured the system to work with this reality. It's the beauty of halacha and the beauty of Yiddishkeit in general. We don't try to defy reality. We embrace reality and then try to structure everything around the realistic circumstances. So therefore Rashi says, so we'll say, that works. By the way, that works Mondays and Thursdays. What doesn't it work for? What doesn't it work for? Shabbos Mincha. Why can't I make Osafas by Shabbos Mincha? This is very interesting. Shabbos Mincha, Samoch Lechashechahu, Share Kol Hayom Hayu Regilin Lidrosh. Rabbi say, this is beautiful. It seems from Rashi that when did they used to daven Mincha by Shabbos, right? Already towards the end of the day. Kind of like what we do. I mean, we daven Mincha a little bit earlier, because to have Shalosh Shuddis, but they used to daven Mincha late in the day. Why would they daven Mincha late in the day? Because Rabbi say, for a balabas, for a balabatim, Shabbos is the day that we learn. Right? Because at the end of the day, the rest of the week, we're pulled in so many different directions. Shabbos is the day that we learn. So Shabbos afternoon was used for learning. So they used to daven mincha later in the day. Because of that, it was a timing issue. Right? It was a timing issue. You can't start adding on Osafis because you need to go ahead and be able to finish the Kriya before Shkia, before sunset. Incredible. So Rabbi says that's Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Mincha, 3 aliyos, no Hosafos. No Hosafos. They maftir minavi. Good. So we'll say another interesting idea we saw. Haposeach v'achosim b'torah baruch lefnei Avraham. We'll say, this is fascinating. In the original creation of Kriyas HaTorah, only the person who got the first aliyah and the person who got the last aliyah made a bracha. So in the first aliyah, they made the bracha of Asher Bachrabanu, and after the last aliyah, they made the bracha of Asher Nasan Lanu. There were no brachos in between. We saw this in Maseches Brachos already. We'll get into this now again. Good. Brash Chadashim, Bosei Rosh Chodesh, and Cholamayid, Korin Arba'a. We read 4 aliyos. Read 4 aliyos. So the Gemara says, "Ein pochsin mehen." You can't read less than 4 aliyos. Ve'im mosifan aleim, but no hosafos. Then I will say what's interesting about Rosh Chodesh and Cholamayid is ultimately again they're quasi yomim tovim, but you're allowed to do malacha. So whenever you have a concept of people have to go to work or there's going to be work to be done, you can't make hosafos. So the Gemara says, there's no haftorah. Same idea. The person who gets the first aliyah, before the first aliyah you make a bracha, and after the last aliyah you make the concluding bracha. Zaklal. Rabbi say, here is the rule. Kol yom, kol sheyish bo musaf, ve'ino yomtiv, any day that has musaf, but is not a Yom Tiv, so I will say that would be like what? That would be like Rosh Chodesh and Cholamayid, even though Cholamayid is Yom Tiv, but it's not a Yom Tiv per se in terms of Isra Malacha. Korin Arba, we read 4 aliyas. Be Yom Tiv, on Yom Tiv itself, we read 5. Then I will say, interestingly enough, we don't read the full number of, because Yom Tiv has a mitzvah of simcha, so we want people to physically enjoy the Yom Tiv, so therefore again, even then, we limit the number of aliyahs to 5. B'Yom Kippurim, Shisha, we'll discuss why this is. B'Shabbos, Shiva. On Shabbos, 7 aliyahs. In Pochsin, I will say, on Shabbos, for the 7 aliyahs, you can't read less than 7 aliyahs. Avol, Mosifan Alehen. However, halacha l'maisa, you are permitted to go ahead and add on to the aliyahs. Umaftirim benavi, and on Shabbos you read Haftorah as well. So interestingly enough, this idea that there's only one bracha in the beginning, one bracha in the end, that seems to be the same for all kriyos. So we've got Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Mincha, 3 aliyos, no add-on, no detracting, no Haftorah. We've got Rosh Chodesh, Cholamayid, 4 aliyos. We've got Yom Tiv, 5 aliyos. Yom Kippur, 6 aliyos. Right? Yom Kippur and Yom Tov, of course, do have a maftir. In all of these cases, you can't add on to any of the aliyos. Shabbos is the exception. 7 aliyos. can't subtract, but can add on. There is a haftorah as well. And in all of these situations, in the Mishnaic model, one bracha before the Kriya, one bracha after the Kriya. Beautiful. Says the Gemara Tana, Ma she'en kin baTorah. So Shabbos is very interesting. Now remember, the Mishnah began by saying that for Megillah, you could read the Megillah standing up or sitting down. Standing up or sitting down. Ultimately, again, now the Gemara says, but this is not true by Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah must, Rashi says, She'in korim baTorah batzibor miyushav. When reading the Torah in public, you could only do so standing. Only do so standing. So says the Gemara, Mehani mili, how do I know this? But beautiful Gemara. Am Rabbi Avol Damakra V'ato po amod imadi. The pasuk says, Chalash Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, and you come and stand with me. So I will say this idea that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah, it's done ba'amida. It's done standing. It's done standing. And therefore, again, that models for us the idea that whenever Torah is read, and by extension taught, right? Because remember again, the whole point of Kriyas HaTorah is to teach Torah communally. Whenever that is done, it must be done ba'amida. It must be done standing. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Abo says, Ilmoli Mikra Kosov. Were not for this pasuk that it was stated, I'af Shala Omra. You wouldn't even be able to say it, because what happened? Kiviyachol, Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'amida. So Yabo said, Lashon of V'ata po amod imadi. You come and stand with me. Indicates tas what? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol is standing as well. So you see the Ribono Shel Olam standing when he's teaching Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. This becomes the model. Therefore, whenever we read Torah in B'tzibor, which is a form of Talmud Torah Derabim, right, communal Talmud Torah, the Baal Korei stands. So beautiful. Rabbi Avo says, Minayin l'Rav shelo yeshev agabe mita v'yeshana l'talmida agabe karka. But says a beautiful Gemara. From where do we know that a Rebbe shouldn't sit on a comfortable bed and teach Torah to his students while they're sitting on the floor? Now, as Rashi points out over here, Shelo yeshav agabe mita ela oshneim agabe mita oshneim agabe karka. In other words, how do I know that the Rebbe and the student must be sitting in the same level? Which I will say means, in other words, either both of them are sitting on the floor, both of them are sitting on a chair, both of them are sitting on a bed. But it can't be that the Rebbe is sitting on a chair and the Talmidim are sitting on the floor. Where do I know that? The Gemara says, Shneimar va'ata po amod imadi. Because it will say when HaKadosh Baruch Hu invites Moshe Rabbeinu to learn Torah, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He invites Moshe Rabbeinu to remain on the same level. Stay with me. What Shabbos say, if you think about it, is such a powerful idea that the Rebbe student relationship is most established when the Rebbe creates an atmosphere of equality. You see, it's in general, if people feel they're being spoken down to, right, then at the end of the day, most of us are not receptive when we feel that someone is speaking to us on high. And the truth is, if the Rebbe thinks that he's better than the Talmidim, generally he's not going to be an effective conveyor of messages, of Torah messages as well. It's so profound. What the Gemara is teaching us is the Rebbe and the Talmidim have to be on the same level. When they're learning, we're learning as peers. And the truth is, the reason for that is also very profound. We've seen this many times. Harbe lamarati, right? Mirabosai. But the Gemara says again, V'yosra kula mitamidai. Right? A Rebbe is able to learn more from his students than from anyone else. So therefore there is this equality that is established in the learning model. They have to be on the same level. If the Rebbe is on the comfortable bed and the students are on the floor, the inequality is not there. If the inequality is not there, the Talmidim will not be receptive to learning from the Rebbe, because it looks like the Rebbe is kind of lording over them, and the Rebbe will not be receptive to learning from the Talmidim. Such a profound yisod. Both say the Gemara goes right there. This is incredible. Tana Rabbanon. Mimos Moshe and Rabbi Gamliel, from the times of Moshe until Rabbi Gamliel, lo hayu lemeidin Torah ela mu'umad. Ultimately, again, they would only learn Torah standing up. The Bible says it's very profound. They would only learn Torah standing up. And that was a display of kavod Torah. Mishemeis Rabbi Gamliel, when Rabbi Gamliel passed away, Yarad Choli La'olam. Ultimately, again, a sickness, an illness, really means a weakness, came down to the world. V'hayu lemeidin Torah miyushav. And we started learning Torah sitting down. In other words, they're both saying, what the Gemara is painting was a fascinating picture. The ideal way to learn Torah is how? Standing up. It's covered. And that's how we used to learn Torah, standing up. Once Rabbi Gamliel passed away, there was an illness, or better stated, a certain weakness. Also, I'll just tell you something amazing. Historically, with the death of Rabbi Gamliel, well, it's fascinating to see the rise of Christian influences. Rabbi Gamliel is actually fascinating, is treated in certain circles of Christianity as one of the saints, which is fascinating how they conscripted Rabbi Gamliel for their own. So there seems to be, with the death of Rabbi Gamliel, something happening in the world that ultimately, again, created a weakness, a theological, a spiritual weakness, that we started learning Torah sitting down. The Gemara said, "V'hainu disnan mishameis Rabbi Gamliel batal kavod Torah." When Rabbi Gamliel died, kavod Torah died with him. Kasav echad omer ve'eshem bahar. So we'll say, so this is why. So just to understand the progression, just so we stay on topic. The Mishnah told us Megillah could be read standing up or sitting down. The Gemara just says, by the way, that might be true for Megillah. It's absolutely not true for what? For Torah. And now, by the way, so that's for Kriyas Torah. Just know it used to be that we would always learn Torah standing up. That's the way it was at the times of Moshe until Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel passes away. There's some type of weakness that descends upon the world, and from then on, we learn Torah sitting down. Now, watch this. The Gemara is something very interesting. One pasuk says, "Va'eshev bahar." Now, this is very interesting. One pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I sat on the mountain." Right when he went up to get the Torah, I sat on the mountain. V'kasav echad omer, "Va'anochi amarati bahar." One pasuk says, "I stood on the mountain." So which one is it? Amar Rav, Omeid v'lomeid, Yoshev v'shoneh. Rav said Moshe Rabbeinu would stand and learn, but then he would sit down to review. Right? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Chanina Omer lo Omeid v'lo Yoshev elo shochen. No. What it means is he wasn't sitting or standing. He was kind of like hunched over. So I'll tell you something very interesting. So first of all, Rabbi Yochanan Omer in yeshiva elo lashon hakava. Rabbi Yochanan says really yeshiva doesn't mean sitting. Yeshiva means tarrying. V'anochi Yoshevar doesn't mean I sat on the mountain. Rather, Anochi Yoshevar means what? I remained on the mountain. Shene'emar b'teishu b'kadesh yomim rabim. Rava Amar Rava says, Rakos me'umad, v'kashos miyushav. No. The easy mitzvahs, quote unquote, Moshe Rabbeinu learned standing up, and the harder ones he learned sitting down. So we'll say what's interesting about this last Gemara is as follows. There seems to be like a little bit of a contradiction, not a contradiction, but the Gemara first says, from the times of Moshe to Rabbi Gamliel, how did we learn Torah? Standing up. Rabbi Gamliel dies, Yorad Chobi, a weakness, an illness descended upon the world. Everybody learns Torah sitting down. Now what do we see? That on Har Sinai, what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? What did he do? At least according to 2 out of the 3 opinions, he stood and he sat. He stood perhaps again for the easier mitzvos. Either he stood to learn, sat to review. He went ahead, or he stood for the easier mitzvos, but had to sit down to concentrate for the more difficult mitzvahs. So I'll tell you something amazing. I saw quoted Rav Shechter quotes in Nefesh Harav. He quotes over here from Rav Chaim of Volozhin. So I want to quote you. Listen to what he says. He says, "De be'emes min harai haya min ha'emes min harai haya la'amo tamei b'shas limud Torah midin kavod Torah." Right? The ideal. See what the Gemara is pointing out for us over here is the ideal way to learn Torah is standing. That's kavod haTorah. Honor to the Torah is you learn standing. Okay, the Isa b'Gemara, fine. Now, Rav Chaim Volozhin points out something very interesting. He says, "Ulam lepamim sha'inyan hanyamatu kasha va'az ha'amida miyagas es ha'adam alomid u'machlishaso mikachosav ve'eno manichaso lahisrakis b'chol kocho v'nimtza shelimudo lakui imkin harizeh." So we'll say, and then Rav Chaim Volozhin says, but one second. But the same Gemara says that when Moshe Rabbeinu was encountered a difficult topic, what did he do? He sat down. Now, why did he sit down, I will say? We'll say, it's the same way, right? It's interesting. colloquially, right? When you have to tell bad news to someone, what's the expression that's often used? Take a seat. Sit down. Say why? Because there's an understanding that to absorb deeper things, I need to be sitting. And again, I'll say it's interesting. Chayv says it's very simple. Because standing requires more energy. Right? So if I'm standing, that's taking some of my strength. If I have to absorb something of enormous import, I need to sit down because I need to devote my energies ultimately to understanding the particular matter at hand. That's why even Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, the easy stuff, I could stand for. It's incredible. Even Moshe Rabbeinu. Now what's the irony? Moshe Rabbeinu, lechem lo achalti, mayim lo shasisi, didn't eat and he didn't drink. So you would think he is totally malamala min hateva. Yet, when it comes to understanding certain deep things, he needs to sit down. Rav Chaim Volozher says something amazing. Nimtza, imkein, hare az yesh stira bein mitzvahs Talmud Torah le mitzvahs kavod haTorah. So Rav Chaim Volozher says something amazing. He says there's a clash. When I have to learn something complex, there's a clash. What's the clash? Between kavod Torah and Talmud Torah. So what's right? Kavod Torah, honor to Torah, demands that how should I learn? How should I learn? Standing up. Talmud Torah is the mitzvah to understand. Talmud Torah demands that when I get to a complex situation, what do? Sit down. So we'll say this is a Chav so profound. There's a clash between Talmud Torah and Kavod Torah. And says Chav Volozher, v'harei dinhu shemitzvahs Talmud Torah docha lemitzvahs kavod haTorah. Zer she'amar Rava kashos miyushav ki me'achar shekavod haTorah nichat. Listen to this. This is so incredible. Rav Chaim Volozher says when there is a clash between kavod haTorah and Talmud Torah wins. So again, if there's remember again, there's a complex situation of Torah. I could stand up because that's kavod Torah, but I won't necessarily understand. Or I could sit down, really understand, but it's a lack of kavod Torah. Says Rav Chaim Volozher, when there's a clash between kavod Torah, honor to the Torah, and Talmud Torah, learning Torah, Talmud Torah wins. The both say incredible. You know what else it teaches me? This is such an incredible metaphor for life. Sometimes there is a clash between being right and getting the job done. Right? You say this happens often in life, right? I can be right or I can get the job done. And sometimes getting the job done means letting go of being right and just doing what has to get done. This is maisim b'chol yom. And so often in life, we choose to focus on, no, I want to be right. Okay, shkoyach, you're right. You're right, mazel tov. You're right today, you're right yesterday, you're right the day before. And what have you accomplished? Absolutely nothing. Sometimes it is so much better not to focus on being right and just to focus on getting the job done. It is so much better not to not to literally stand on ceremony and focus on accomplishment in life. We get so hung up. We'll say, how many times does it happen where, let's say, something needs to get done. And by the way, this could happen in shul, this could happen in your business, this could happen anywhere. And the person says, that's not for me to do. That's beneath me. But it's got to get done. It's got to get done. Sometimes it's so much better to dispense with the kavod and just get the Talmud. And I both say it's true with Torah and it's true with life. Chaim Volozher teaches us when there's a clash between kavod Torah and Talmud Torah, so much better to understand what you're learning than it is to literally stand on ceremony. And in life, so much better to accomplish, to get the job done, even if it means being wrong, or even if it means not having the satisfaction of being right. It is so much better to get the job done and accomplish than to focus on ceremony of who is correct. Incredible yisod. Both say, let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, Kara echad, Kara shnayim yatsu. So remember again, Mishnah said whether one person read the Megillah, two people read the Megillah, or Yiyotze. Amid Beis, Tana. What's my bookmark? Tana. Mashe Enki Torah. So we'll say once again, this is not true by Torah. By Kriyas Torah, you can only have one person reading. Tana Rabbanan. But Torah, echad korei ve'echad metargim. Shabbos by Torah, one person could read and one person could translate. Right, the Torgaman. Right, ubilvad shlo ye echad korei ushnayim metargim. I will say, but by Torah, you can't have one person reading and two people translating. Now, I will say, the idea in general why you can't have two people reading or translating is because trei koli lo mishtamoi. We assume two voices cannot be heard in unison. Right? It's impossible for two voices to be exactly on the same, right, the same tempo, same. So what's going to end up happening is something is going to get lost. Now, when it comes to Torah, I will say, remember again, so Kriyas HaTorah is important. And remember, what's the role of the Torgaman? What's the role of the Torgaman? What's the role of the Torgaman? To allow people to understand. Remember, Rabbi said, in the times of the Gemara, we'll see, we don't think about it just a moment. Like, I got an email yesterday from Art Scroll that you could now buy an iPad Pro, like the big one. They're having a sale, $1,800. It's sort of like $2,500, and it's fully loaded. Right? What does it mean, fully loaded? No, not Netflix and everything else. Right? Right? Fully loaded. Gans Shas, Mishnayos, Chumash, right? I think you even get like the, touched by, the whole area, touched by, and it doesn't sound right, but you understand what I mean, right? Right, the whole series, right? The whole series, right? Right, you get. Oh, here you go. You're gonna have to edit some of this, right? So you understand, right? We get the whole every single book the article put out. Let's say, do you understand what that means? That you can get an iPad. And every single thing in Torah is on it, and you want it in English, you want it in French, you want it in Hebrew, it's all there. So it's incredible. It's incredible. Never before in Klal Yisrael's history has such a concept like this existed. So how did people learn Torah? Imagine for a moment, you didn't have an education, Bizman Gemara, which was very common. I didn't have an education. So what do? You showed up to shul on time, right? They had Kriyas HaTorah, and the Torgaman translated the Psukim. And you listen to that, and that was your Torah education. That's what you got. Obviously, we don't appreciate the times that we live in. We're going to finish Shas. I will say this was a gift and a privilege, historically reserved for a select few. And in Meretz Hashem, we're going to go ahead and finish all incredible, absolutely incredible. So I will say, so therefore, again, the Gemara says you can't have two people translating. Because it is of critical importance that halacha l'maisa, critical importance that we have clarity by the Torah going. Ubenavi and by Navi, echad korei shnayim metargimin. By Navi, Rabbi say you can have one person reading, but you can't have two people translating. Because Rabbi said by Navi, it's okay if there's two people translating because there's no halacha learned by Navi. Right, so therefore we're not concerned, even if people get a little bit confused, it's okay, nothing bad is going to happen. What you can't have are two people, you can't have two people reading and two people translating. Listen to how beautiful this is. By Hallel and by Megillah, afilu asara korin v'asara metargimin. You could even have 10 people reading and 10 people translating. My time, I will say, what's the reason? Kevan de Chaviva, since Hallel and since Megillah are chaviv, right, are something that are so near and dear to people, yavi datayu v'shami, people pay attention. So we'll say it's incredible. So the idea is, something that people pay a lot of attention to, they'll be able to hear even if multiple people are reading it. So you could have 10 people reading Hallel, 10 people reading the Megillah, and it's fine. Why? Because people are excited by these things. Anything that people are excited by, they will pay explicit attention to, and we're not worried about them getting confused even by multiple voices. I will say, I'll tell you, there's an incredible tshuva by Rav Moshe. Somebody asked Rav Moshe the following situation. Two bar mitzvah boys have the same parsha, and the parents wanted to go ahead and have them both read maftir together, and go ahead and read the Haftorah together. Right? And the logic was this idea, Kevan de Chadiva, everybody's going to pay attention to that, right? Two bar mitzvah is so beautiful, reading maftir together, reading the Haftorah together. So Rav Moshe said the truth is, he thinks that me'ikra adin should be mutter. He thinks should be mutter, especially today, we don't have the Torgaman, right? And people don't really rely on Kriyas HaTorah today for the same reasons they relied on it historically. But Rav Moshe says, nevertheless, by Kriyas HaTorah we don't do it. But me'ikra adin, he wanted to paskin that technically it should work. Technically, it should work. You should be able to have 2 bar mitzvah boys reading them after to get them after. Okay? Incredible. Again, halacha ma'aseh, we don't do it. Umakom shnagu levarich yivarich. So let's say if you live in a place where the minhag is to make the bracha, you make the bracha. You make a bracha on Megillah. Amar Abaye lo shana alalachareha. When we speak about again bracha being dependent on minhag hamakom, that is only talking about the bracha that you make after the Megillah. Rabbosai, everyone agrees you must make a bracha before you read the Megillah. So it's fascinating. Everyone was making a bracha before reading of the Megillah. The machlokes minhag hamakom was on the bracha after Mikra Megillah. So Rabbosai, how do you know you have to make a bracha before you read the Megillah? Very simple. Because Rabbi said this is a general klal. This is a general klal. When it comes to mitzvahs, we make a bracha on all mitzvahs. So the Gemara says, my mashma, the high over loshon daktumi. Rabbi said, now this is the halachic principle of kol mitzvos kulan mevarich alein over lasiyasan. All mitzvos, we make a bracha over lasiyasan. Now we translate that as prior. But how do you know that over means prior? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Kra Vayaratz Achimatz Derech HaKikar Vayavaras HaKushi. Pasuk says Achimatz ran by the way of the plain and he passed the Kushi. So you see Vayavar, right, means to come before something. Abai Amar Mehacha Vu over Lifnehem. V'bai Sema Mehacha Vayavar Malkam Lifnehem V'Hashem V'Rasham. So we'll say ultimately again, so you see a lashon of over is a lashon of prior. Then we'll say, now to be clear, the concept of making a bracha prior to mitzvos is a rabbinic innovation. Right? Brachos are all midrabanan, but Chazal instituted that you have to make a bracha before you do a mitzvah. We'll say, so the Svarim write, why is that? What's the point of a bracha? The bracha is a preparatory act. Because Chazal are trying to condition us to the idea that what? A spiritual endeavor can only be meaningful if it is preceded by preparation. You can't roll into Ruchnius. I have to prepare myself for the Maisa Mitzvah. So ultimately, again, a bracha is the way I prepare myself for a Maisa Mitzvah. We'll say that's by the Hasidim. Already before the Hasidim, already by the Kabbalists, before the Hasidus started, you have L'Shem Yichud, right? So remember again, now it's probably by the Hasidim, L'Shem Yichud Kutshabricha, which again is the introductory paragraph, even before a bracha. Because we'll say, see, now what's happened is, to a certain degree, unfortunately, brachos before mitzvos have become rote. So now I have to prepare myself before the bracha. How do I prepare myself before the bracha? L'shem yichud. L'shem yichud is which I will say is why, again, saying l'shem yichud is, if you can, is so important. It's so important. Especially, again, maybe not every single day, but certainly on Shabbos before we make Kiddush, right, on Shabbos before benching, adding in that l'shem yichud, it just frames the entire experience in a different way. It frames the bracha in a different way, frames the mitzvah in a different way. So the Gemara says, what bracha do you make before Megillah? So it says, the Gemara, Amrav Sheshus Mikatrazya, Ikla L'Kamed Ravashi, Ubarich Manach. Rabbi say, what's Manach? Manach is Mikra Megillah, Sha'asanisim, and Shechianu. Those are the 3 brachos we make before Megillah. Manach. Mikra Megillah, right? Mikra Megillah, Sha'asa, the known as Nisim, and Shechianu is the Ches of Shechianu. Good. So the Gemara says, what's the bracha we make after Megillah? Now, we'll say now it's clear that making the bracha after the Megillah was dependent on Minhag HaMakom. Some places did it, some places didn't do it. So what bracha do you make after the Megillah? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, harav esrivenu, v'hadan estinenu. So we'll say, this is a fascinating bracha. Hashem is the one who fights our fights. Dan estinenu, He judges our judgments. No kemistigmasenu, excuse me. He goes and literally again takes our revenge. V'nifra lanu mitzarenu, and he extracts repayment from those who afflict us. And he pays back all of those who inflict pain upon us, all of our enemies. Baruch atah Hashem, hanifra liyisrael mikol tzareim. Blessed are you, Hashem, who ultimately, again, hanifra liyisrael mikol tzareim, who literally exacts payment from all those who visit pain upon us. Rava Amar Rava says, Hakel HaMoshiach. You have to also, Rava had a different version. Rava said, the bracha is Hakel HaMoshiach. Little simpler. Right? The God who provides salvation. Amar Papa, Hilchach Nemerna L'Tarvayu. Let's just say both. Baruch Ato Hashem Hanifra L'Yisrael Mikol Tzareim Hakel HaMoshiach. And I will say that indeed is the concluding bracha of the Megillah. Again, we say this whole thing. Remember, we say Haraves Rivenu Adanas Dinenu Alokemes Tikmasenu, and then we end. I will say this is what's called in halacha a bracha arichta, which is a bracha that begins with Baruch and a bracha that ends with Baruch. And the last Baruch is Baruch Ato Hashem Hanifra L'Yisrael Mikol Tzareim Hakel HaMoshiach. That's the bracha from Megillah. And I will say we don't have time for it today, but what I will point out is something very interesting. Is the Beis Yosef, we'll get to it. The Beis Yosef says, why does Mikra Megillah get this kind of bracha? What a bracha, right? So think about this. Haravis Rivenu, Adanas Dinenu, Anakimas Tikmasenu, so profound. For Megillah. Other Yomim Tovim don't get this kind of bracha. So again, you remind me at a future time when we have a few more moments, we'll discuss the Beis Yosef. Beautiful, beautiful insight. Let's go a little bit weiter. Says the Gemara, B'sheni b'Shabbos Mincha, B'sheni b'Chamishi b'Shabbos Mincha Koren Shlosha. We read three aliyahs. By Mondays, Thursday, Shabbos, Mincha. Hani Shlosha Kineged me. But say, why three aliyahs? So, Amravasi Kineged Torah Nevi'im Uksuvim. Rava Amar Kineged Kohanim Nevi'im Yisraelim. Okay, so there's different three symbolisms. Elahad D'Tanei Simi. In Pochsin Miyud Psukim Beis HaKnesses. Vayidaber Olam Min HaMinyan Hani Asara Kineged me. So we'll say, now I know why three aliyahs. Right? Either Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim, Kohanim Nevi'im Yisraelim, but Abba, we also know that of those three aliyahs, we never read less than a minimum of 10 psukim. Right? 10 psukim is the minimum unit of any Kriyas HaTorah. And by the way, Vayidaber Shema Moshe Lemar counts as one of the psukim. So why 10? Why 10? So Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi, Kineged Asar Batlan Shel Beis HaKnesses. It was like corresponds to the 10 people. Remember, again, we saw this before, earlier in the Masechta, the Asar Batlanim, who were the 10 people whose job was to do what? Make sure that there was always a minyan to be found in the Beis Medrash, in the Beis HaKnesses. So corresponding to these 10 men, whose lives are dedicated to ensuring a continuous and perpetual minyan, we read Nolas and 10 Psukim. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Kineged Asar Sadibros, Shenemru LaMoshe B'Sinai. Beautiful. Rabbi Levi Amar Kineged Asar, we'll leave that out. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kineged Asar Ma'amaros, Sheva Nivra Olam. Very interesting. Rabbi Yochanan says, it corresponds to what we call Asara Ma'amaros. They both say the Asara Ma'amaros are the 10 expressions through which the Ribono Shel Olam created the world. To which the Gemara says, Hey Ninhu. So what are the 10 expressions? They both say, anytime it says, for example, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Ar, Vayehi Ar, that's an expression. So the Gemara says there are 10 of those. The Gemara says, no there aren't. The Gemara says, Hani Tishahavu. There are only 9 of them. In other words, if you go through the Genesis narrative, the story of Ma'aseh Bereshis, you will find that there are in fact what? Only 9 Vayomer Elokim or Vayomer Hashem Yehi, whatever. Right now, whatever. Right? Vayomer Elokim Yehi, fill in the blank. So the Gemara says, Bereshis Nami Ma'amarhu. We'll say this is fascinating. Bereshis Bara Elokim is in and of itself one of the expressions of creation. Isn't that incredible? It's one of the Ma'amaros. T'chsev Bidvar Hashem Shamayim Ne'asu Uberuach Piv Kol Tziva'am. Ultimately, again, with the word of Hashem, the heavens were created, and with the breath of His mouth, all the hosts. So we'll say, you see over here that it's fascinating. We look at Bereshis Bara Elokim as a statement, when in fact the Gemara says it's not a statement. What is it? In fact, actually, it is a maimar. It is actually a statement. Amar Rava. So we'll say Rava says, here's what's interesting. Here's what I've got. Right. So remember, I've got 3 aliyos. What are 3 aliyos? Why 3? Why 3? Kohen Levi Yisrael or Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. Right? No less than a total of 10 psukim. Why? All right. Asara Sadibros, Asara Ma'amaros, Asara Iludim. Good. So we'll say, here's what I know. If I've got 3 aliyos and 10 psukim, how is it going to be split up? Well, it could be split up either, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, right? 3, 3, 4. Right, that's what's going to happen. Because remember, again, as we're going to see, you can never read an aliyah less than 3 psukim. So now watch this. So now the Gemara says, so what's going to be the shayla? What's going to be the shayla? Which aliyah should you read as the 4 aliyah? Right? So now it's going to be 3, 3, 4. Which aliyah should be the 4 aliyah? To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabba, this is great. Rishon Shekar Daled Meshubach. If you read 4 for the first aliyah, it's Meshubach. Sheni Shekar Daled Meshubach. If you read the second aliyah, 4 psukim, it's Meshubach, it's praiseworthy. Shlishi Shekar Daled Meshubach. And if you read the third aliyah, 4 psukim, it's Meshubach. All right, very helpful. Right? And in other words, also, it seems to be that there's grounds to say whichever aliyah you read as the 4 pasuk aliyah, that's great. So the Gemara says, how do I know this? Rishon Shekar Daled Meshubach. Tisnan b'shalosh kupos shal shalosh sein sheven terminus halishka v'yakasev alein aleph beis gimel leida eza mehen nitrama rishon lakri mimana rishon shemitza rishon revosei shkalim. We had 3 different kupos, 3 different baskets in which to hold the new machzis hashakel, the new half shkalim, and they were labeled aleph beis gimel because when you withdraw money from the new collection for communal offerings, it is a mitzvah to take from the first basket first. So from here you see that the first has importance. Therefore, again, you should read 4 psukim for the first aliyah. What about the middle one that you read? 4 psukim has meshubach. The sanya al mul pnei menorah ya'iru melamed shemitzadei pneim klape ner ma'aravi. The ner ma'aravi klape shkina. I will say in the Beis Hamikdash you had all of the menorahs, all of the lamps, their wicks were tilted towards the middle candle. And the middle candle itself was tilted towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So you see from here, everything is tilted towards the middle. From here you see that the middle is Meshubach. Right? The middle is important. And therefore, again, based on that, you should read 4 psukim for the middle aliyah. V'acharon shekara arba Meshubach. And I will say, how do you know that if you read 4 psukim for the last aliyah, it's Meshubach? Very simple. Ma'alim ba'kodesh v'lo moridin. Ultimately, again, because we go up and we don't go down. But in general, in Kedusha, we always ascend, we don't descend. Rav Papa Egla Bekanishta, da Abi Gober. Rav Papa went to the base, to the shul of Abi Gober. The Kari Rishon Arba, he read 4 psukim for the first aliyah, and ultimately what? And ultimately, v'shabche Rav Papa. And Rav Papa went ahead and praised him. And Rabbi said, this is indeed halacha, but when you have a kriya of exactly 10 psukim, you'll read the first aliyah, 4 psukim, the remaining ones 3, if it works out that way. But lamais, again, you just see that there's a cogent argument to be made for reading 4 for each of the. So Rabbi said, we know what it tells you, you know what the takeaway message? Everyone and everything is chashuv. Right? Number 1, number 2, number 3, wherever you find yourself in life, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, there's a chashivas to be found, whatever our station and whatever our situation in life. We'll stop over here. What I'd like to do, again, just for the few remaining minutes we have, in Mishnah Yomi, Yahrzeit Hashem, for those of you who are learning Mishnah Yomi with us, again, you'll enjoy Yahrzeit Hashem. For those of you